say that when I was asked by Pete to come here and speak tonight, he said, hey, we're going to have you back cleanup. For the people that aren't baseball fans, cleanup is fourth. And I'm about 12. That's all right. I did want to say that I couldn't help but notice when Nathan Davis was so poignantly speaking about his friendship with Ray Maycumber. They were talking about going and doing code on a computer for balls to bounce back and forth or something. That's not the generation that I remember. I mean, I was a little bit after you. We had the Oregon Trail, we had Where in the World with Carmen Sandiego. But don't feel bad about that because computers weren't even around when Brad Miller was in high school. Turn this way. I could sit here and really thank a lot of people. There were a lot of people that were responsible for getting us through this. One of my favorite people in history is General Douglas MacArthur. And Douglas MacArthur was known for just despising politics. He wanted to be, cut loose and be able to do what he needed to do with the armed forces, both in World War II and then Korea. He hated politics so much that he was ultimately fired by Harry Truman, the President of the United States at the time, but he was a great general. And our Douglas MacArthur in Ferry County is John Foster Fanning. John, we get tangled up here. That was almost as much of a mess as Olympia is. I'm not joking about this. We have a real treasure in John Foster Fanning. A lot of folks don't know what goes on behind the scenes, but I remember a time, and I think John and both Brad Miller are probably going to remember this just as I say it, and they probably never even given it any thought, but this happened literally the first week that I was first elected county commissioner. And I was invited by Chairman Miller at the time to sit in on a meeting between himself and John Foster Fanning. And even 4.5, almost 5 years ago, they were talking about what we're going to do when we have the next big firestorm. And they said we need to have places lined up so that we can have our firefighters staged in appropriate areas. One of them was the fairgrounds. One of them was over on the other side of the county at some of the county parks that we had there. And so those are the little things that, that took place 5, 6 years ago even that a lot of people don't know. It's good leadership from Brad Miller and John Foster Fanning to come to a mutually beneficial agreement and arrangement so that the people of Ferry County are best served. And that was 5 years ago. So I think a round of applause for those folks.
What I really appreciate is this come together. I don't think we've done this before. I've been on the beat here for about 38 years or 36 years, a couple of years in the service, fire service outside of Ferry County, and I think this is the first time I've really seen this. So thank you very much. And, I gave my staff the opportunity to be here, but they're dedicated firemen and firewomen, and they are back at Curlew Station training tonight. So they kind of opted for the winter tactics training because we're always a little short on our training. So before I get into kind of the meat of what I wanted to say, just a couple of thanks. Being a fire chief gives me a lot of opportunity, and this incident gave me even more. And it's pretty rare that I get to give state senators marching orders. But Senator Danson, thank you very much. When I called Brian up, I was in desperate need of resources, and Brian on a Sunday morning began on the phones and got the head of DOT and told him we need some resources. And that was great. I appreciate that a lot. The politicians in our area, Brad, the Board of Commissioners, state representatives, I kind of had a little, kind of private moment. I asked that we leave the politics out while we fought fire. We didn't need to point fingers. We needed to protect the community, and we needed to get a handle on this. And this was big. Biggest landscape fire in just about the history of the state. 334,000, I think is what we burned in Ferry County, and we lost one garage. For those of you whose homes we covered in firefighting foam, I'm sorry, but they're all there. Some real quick thanks. I don't know if John Glenwinkle's in the room. He worked hard keeping the schools open and functioning for us, and we took a lot of advantage of that. There are two people in the room that are key to me. Mike Thompson, of whom Andre Ciaz, Chief Ciaz, knows real well now. Mike Thompson came up from Spokane to help us out. And Mike, you probably saw him in the news a few years ago when he was evacuating the Maple Valley fire area in Spokane. And I think 125 homes went down one afternoon. So Mike's had a few evacuations. He knew how to pull the pin, and he came up and worked as an advisor to us. Mike did so because of Bruce Holloway, another Spokane fire chief who's deputy IC on one of the PMW teams. Bruce was assigned to Kettle Complex, and even though his turf was not the North Star fire, he said, "We will not abandon Republic." So we had plans to intermix the two team resources to provide structural protection to the town of Republic. So that's kind of a pause for me. I want to sharpen the focus a little bit, just to take a moment and recognize some names of the past that are emergency service workers that aren't here with us tonight. Lee Gay. Lee Gay was the founder of our emergency medical service in the county, and Lee died in an ambulance accident back in the early 1980s. George Roop. George Roop was a deputy on a reconnaissance flight. I think it was 1981, plane went down, and George died. Dana Morrison. Dana Morrison was 38 years old. Initial attack, my fire department, pulling hose up a slope in a spring to a careless burner's fire, and Dana died of a heart attack. Matt Lane, Rudy Olin. Rudy was a pilot, Matt was a deputy, search and rescue mission, plane went down, they died. Every day, 24 hours a day, volunteers in this room, professionals in this room, step out the door to the incident call. They never know. They're really hoping for things to go good, and they're all hoping to come home, but they never really know. So I appreciate you coming out and saying thanks. Excuse me. That ties back to what I really want to touch on, and that was that afternoon where Brad and I were talking, and he made it sound good, but I think what I actually said to Brad is if a fire brand storm hits the town of Republic with 60-mile-an-hour winds, with the conditions we had at 11:30 that morning, with my years of experience, I expected to lose 1/3 to 1/2 of the structures in town. And I told Brad that's not my concern. My concern is avoiding the funerals. Because when I stood in the fire station with Chief Ciaz and all of his staff, the FEMA firefighters, the team firefighters, the Forest Service and DNR firefighters, and I looked at those faces, and I knew that they were prepared to go the route, to go the whole way, and I was scared. Showers came, the embers didn't. We still had a lot of work to do, as our songwriters noted, but we got her done. So step back just a little bit from that. I was pretty engaged with Stickpin, but Stickpin ran north in the forest in the Kettle River Range and really flanked down towards Republic, or excuse me, towards Curlew. When I looked south a few days later, I saw smoke in the south. I thought, oh boy, what is that? And I met Reed Hickley for breakfast at a base camp about 6 o'clock in the morning. I said, Reed, what's going on south? He said, well, they're calling it the North Star fire. Well, he gave me the details of where it was. And for a couple of days in a row, Reed and I met for breakfast. Every day, it was a little more grim. And we finally got to that point where I was talking about, where we're thinking the Republic was really threatened. But what I watched with Reed Heckley is every day with a shoestring staff, because resources were stretched all over the nation. Reed was out there working the roads between North Star and Republic. Contingency lines, they lose a line, they try again. Plans after plans, maps after maps, 5 a.m. to midnight every day. And Reed was developing that plan that when we did get the shower and we did not get the embers, it was part of Reed's plan that went into place for the big teams. So when Pete called me up and he said, well, who's out there that we don't know about? They've been saying thanks to firefighters and fire districts and all of us for quite a while, but I hadn't heard much thanks to the Forest Service. And I hadn't heard much thanks at all to Reed. Reed's one of those guys, he won't say this to you, but I know he was out there every day. So Reed Heckley, you want to step up? It's my privilege to introduce you.